Hey, we are live. What is up, fight nerds and dirty gamblers? I am Erik, and this is Erik Bets Fights. Hey, if anybody's watching, will you let me know if you can hear me? Something was something goofy was happening on my end here with my computer. I just got a new computer recently, and this is my first time live streaming with it, and something sounded goofy when I just set it up there. So yeah, if anybody's here, please let me know in the chat if you can hear me, if everything sounds okay. It sounded really weird on my end for some reason, but hopefully everything's working okay. All right, cool. Patrick's here. He said it sounds fine. Welcome. Yeah, welcome, Patrick. Welcome, whomever else might be here. And welcome to those of you who might be watching later after the live stream. This is going to be my full card breakdown for UFC Vegas 64, headlined by the strawweight match between Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Lemos. I usually don't do my full card breakdown as a live stream like this. So this will be interesting. And the funny thing is, I think the universe did this to me on purpose just to like test me so I can like prove to myself that I can do this without a crutch. Because I'm usually very reliant on my notes and I have my notes in front of me. But guess what I did yesterday, guys? I accidentally deleted my notes for this card and I didn't realize it until like 5 minutes ago. I already had this live stream set up and I'm like, all right, well, this is going to be a test then. We're going to see what old Erik can actually remember about this card without my notes. And I also just realized I forgot to set up the screen sharing, but that only takes a second. Let me get this squared away here. Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna we're gonna do this without notes. It'll be interesting. Let's see if we can't. Sorry, gang. It's been a minute since I've done one of these, and I didn't get as prepared as I should have. Anyway, usually I start off this with doing a little recap of how the last event went. I'm not going to do that this time. I will just tell you that I'm coming off of two losing events. I just went on my honeymoon slash first anniversary trip. Like I got married a year ago, but we didn't do a honeymoon, so we saved some money to do a trip for our first anniversary and called it a honeymoon at the same time. And so I wasn't able to do tape for the last card or the card before that, but I made some bets anyway. I just kind of, I pulled the trigger on some things I probably shouldn't have, and I lost two events in a row. So, not that I'm not capable of losing two events in a row, even when I do the research, I certainly am. But yeah, I did lose two events in a row, but I was able to get the tape study done for UFC Vegas 64. So, we're going to go ahead and break this card down. All right. So, the first, the first fight, yeah, we are starting things right off with a banger, folks. We've got I was trying to see if I could get this to zoom a little bit more, but it doesn't want to work with me. There we go. That's a little better. That's a little better. Why won't you move over for it? Where did the that's good enough. Whatever. Anyway, first fight of the night is going to be Ramona Pascual versus Tamiris Vidal. You guys, this is this is about as low level as you can get in the UFC, honestly. I mean, Ramona Pascual 6-4. Tamiris Vidal is 6-1. Ramona Pascual's already fought in the UFC twice. She lost both times, so she came into the UFC at 6-2. If you look at the level of competition she was fighting before coming into the UFC, it was pretty low. She does work with John Wood at Syndicate. I think she's been there like almost 2 years now. So I mean, she is obviously working on improving her skills. And it's not that she doesn't have some skills; she does. Actually, she's got pretty well-rounded skills. Really, they're just not super high level. She can wrestle a little, she can grapple a little, she can strike a little. But kind of what we're seeing here, it's sort of turned into one of those situations where I think she was put into the UFC a little too early, and she's learning on the job. And being a UFC fighter it's a really difficult position in which to learn on the job. She was somebody who obviously had some skills already, but hadn't really fought top shelf competition, and kind of got thrown to the wolves and had to trying to figure her game out while fighting the best in the world, which isn't the easiest thing to do. Glenbot, me too, mate. Thank you for your insight. Yeah, Glenbot, thanks for stopping by. Rob Lawrence gives us a fist bump there. Thanks for stopping by, Rob. Um, but here's the great thing about so Ramona Pascual came in. Also, she's my girl. If you've watched my videos before, I am a Ramona Pascual simp. I have been all along. I bet her in her first two UFC fights. She lost both of them. She's fighting a UFC newcomer here in Tamiris Vidal. And if you haven't watched the tape on Tamiris Vidal, I was gonna say I recommend doing it, but I kind of don't. I kind of don't. Like she really just doesn't appear to have a very high level skill set at all. On the feet, she really doesn't do a whole lot more than just kind of just duck her head and throw big overhands and hope for the best. Um, she does have maybe a little bit of wrestling, and she does have some grappling. She goes for heel hooks a lot. She does a lot of like rolling for leg locks, which I really don't like to see because it's typically, I mean, unless you're Ryan Hall or maybe a handful of other fighters, it's typically a really low percentage move to go for. And also, it puts you in a position where you're using both of your hands. Both of your hands are occupied trying to get the person's leg, which makes it difficult for you to defend yourself when they start raining punches down on you. So, in the tape I watched on Tamira's Vidal, that's something she did a lot. She would even drop back from, which is something I hate to see fighters do when they're in an advantageous position on the ground, they're on top and they give that position up to drop back for a heel hook. She would even do that. And so I finished the tape on this fight and I saw Ramona Pascual at plus 140. And I was like, wow, I'm surprised she's an underdog here, even though I don't think highly of her skill set. I think much less highly of Tamira's Vidal's skill set. And also, she's just now making her UFC debut. And I now kind of wish that I would have bet her at plus 140. It shows plus 135 here, but the Tapology odds are usually a little bit behind. Um, Ramona's dropped to like more like plus 120, plus 115 range now, I think. But I really think she probably should be favored here, unless Tamira's Vidal comes in and shows me something that I didn't see in the tape. The only way I can really see Tamira's Vidal winning this fight is just if she goes for one of those Hail Mary leg locks and happens to get it, which I don't think is very likely. So I do like Ramona Pascual to win here, probably by decision. Um, she potentially find like a late ground and pound finish, maybe something like that could happen, you never know. But I'm thinking probably a decision. And yeah, I decided I wasn't going to bet her just because I was like, man, I've trusted her twice already and it didn't work out, and I don't want to bet on a women's fight this low level, but man, I really do think she should win here, so I might end up pulling the trigger on a bet here, even though it doesn't seem like the greatest idea to me. Let's catch up with the chat a little bit. Glenbot says Ramona UFC fights have gone to decision, so I'm looking for the over 1.5. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think this fight definitely goes. I think it very likely goes to decision, and if it doesn't, I can't see it ending until pretty late in the fight, most likely. Is Vidal that bad? Looks like she has some KO power. Yeah, I mean, she might, because like I said, her striking is. I mean, she loads up on big shots. Just to me, overall, her overall skill set just didn't look very good. She didn't look very poised. She didn't look like she was able to really put the skills together very well. But I mean, given that she's 24 years old and only has 7 fights, I guess that's kind of to be expected. And most of those under pretty low level fighters. She did fight Eileen Perez. She has a win over her, but if you watch that fight, she didn't really. It's not like she really beat Eileen Perez. Eileen Perez just threw an illegal knee and was disqualified. And then she also fought what's her name, Martina Jindrova, and she did beat her. So I guess she's fought some slightly higher level competition, but yeah, I don't think she has a whole lot to offer. So maybe she'll prove me wrong here. Moving on to the next fight. This is definitely a higher level matchup than the one we were just looking at. Anyway, Jake Hadley versus Carlos Candelario. Hadley's a pretty big favorite here. Tapology shows minus 275. I think he might even be a bigger favorite than that now. Like I said, usually Tapology is a little bit behind. But so yeah, for those of you who just joined us, I announced at the beginning of the show. Usually, I'm really reliant on my notes to do these breakdowns, and I actually accidentally deleted my notes. So not only is this the first time that I'm doing the full card breakdown as a live stream, it's also the first time I'm doing it without any notes. So we're just seeing what I actually remember about my tape study, which I have a terrible memory. Usually, I can watch tape and be like, yeah, I don't remember what I saw at all. But so we're relying on what I can remember here. But as a general breakdown for this fight, Hadley's almost a 3-1 favorite here, which I do think Hadley should be favored, but I do think that feels wide. Um, to me, I think Hadley is a fighter who is maybe being a little bit overvalued, and at the same time Candelario is a fighter who's being a little bit undervalued, so I think the line probably should be a little bit closer. These guys have similar skills in some ways. I do think Hadley's skills are probably a little bit more higher level. I think Hadley's a better striker. I think Hadley's a better well, actually, I think Hadley's probably better everywhere. I just don't know by how much. You know what I mean? I don't know if he's as much better everywhere as he should be for me to like a minus 275 to like minus 290 type of price tag. But I do like Jake Hadley to probably win a decision here. You know, we've seen Carlos Candelario get taken down quite a bit. And Jake Hadley, he can wrestle. He doesn't always look to wrestle actively, but you know, he's very aggressive coming in with strikes. I think he'll have the upper hand on strikes here too. Candelario could potentially look to take down Hadley, but if he does, you know, I think Hadley will handle himself okay there. I think Hadley has pretty good top control. I expect that we see most of this fight playing out on the ground with Jake Hadley on top. Um, I see him probably winning a decision. Could he find a sub? Maybe. But Carlos Candelario, I mean, he fought Tatsuro Taira, didn't get submitted. You know, I mean, he's fought some high level grapplers and not been submitted. So I'm thinking he can probably last the 15 minutes with Hadley. But I kind of like Hadley by decision here. Glenbot says, I got you, man, on overs. Yeah, I've been betting a lot of overs lately. Over 1.5, 8 to 10, over 2.5, 7 and 10 of their last 5 fights. Yeah, good call. Yeah, I've been betting a lot of overs lately, and yeah, you can find good lines on those a lot of times. Especially, I've been doing. It's kind of a lucrative MMA. James from Lucrative bets these a lot, and I've been kind of doing that too, is betting the over 1.5s in sloppy heavyweight fights. Which, hey, we'll be getting to one of those a little bit later here, won't we? So yeah, I like Jake Hadley by decision here. Next up, this is a fight that frankly I've had a hard time getting a confident read on, so I don't know that I have a ton of insight for you here, but as far as a kind of an overarching general breakdown, you know, Johnny Munoz obviously is an excellent submission grappler, and Ludwig Sholinian is a pretty good wrestler. So I think as far as the grappling goes, Munoz is more dangerous with the submissions, but I think Sholinian has the better takedowns and probably the better top control, but just the better wrestler overall. On the feet, to me, it feels pretty close on the feet. You know, neither guy is an excellent striker. They've both got a little bit of confidence with their striking. You know, neither of them looks terrible on the feet, but it isn't really where they butter their bread, so to speak. Um, and you know, after I did like right now, it shows Munoz minus 200 and Sholinian plus 165. Actually, I'm gonna pull up fight odds. Just one second here. Oops, fight odds.io. I meant to have this open too, guys. Sorry about that. I can actually get the proper odds here. So yeah, we can get okay. So Sholinian's out there as high as plus 203. I decided after I did the tape on this fight that, you know, I think he was around this 165 line or so after I finished the tape. And I was like, you know, I don't mind an underdog shot on Sholinian, but that number isn't quite where I want it to be. And in my written breakdown this week, I said I would consider a shot on Sholinian if he got up around plus 190, and he's sitting at like plus 200 now. So I do think that there's some value there because I do think this fight could play out pretty closely. I don't think Johnny Munoz is that much better than Ludwig Sholinian. I really don't. But at the same time, I'm not super confident in that read because this wasn't a fight that I came away from the tape like really feeling locked in on it. You know, sometimes you really feel like you get a strong read. Sometimes you're kind of like, I'm not sure. So my thought is that Sholinian probably is a good bet at plus 200, but I haven't pulled the trigger on that yet. So we'll see. We'll see. I might still have to do that. But yeah, as far as a pick, I'm gonna, yeah, I guess I'm gonna lean Munoz by decision, but only slightly. Yeah, as far as making a bet, I personally wouldn't bet or parlay Munoz at like that minus 200 or worse range. So yeah, we're looking at a shot on Sholinian here potentially, but not sure yet. Next up, we've got Jinyu Frey versus Poliana Viana. This is another one that I came away with feeling like I didn't have a strong read. As soon as I finished the tape, I liked Jinyu Frey slightly. And you know, the more I kind of thought about it, and the more I sort of listened to some other breakdowns and heard just kind of some other approaches to this fight, I started to lean Poliana Viana a little bit. Where are the odds on this right now? I think Viana is favored a little bit. Yeah, Viana like minus 125, Jinyu Frey plus 122. I guess that seems about right to me. Um, you know, I think Jinyu Frey is the better striker. I think she's the more technical striker. She has nice straight technical punches. She hits pretty hard. You know, Poliana Viana does have a striking game as well. She's a little bit more. She likes to get busy with kicks. You know, she's a little bit bigger and rangier. She likes to kind of stay on the outside and use her kicks. I think Jinyu Frey is the better boxer here. But obviously, Poliana Viana, mostly known as a submission grappler, right? She does have a lot of submission wins on her record. She's got a handful of armbar wins in the UFC and quite a few armbar wins before getting to the UFC as well. But Jinyu Fry, I think she's had 21 professional fights, if I remember correctly, and she's been submitted only once. So, I think Poliana Viana's best path to victory here is probably a submission, and I don't necessarily see that as likely over Jinyu Fry. But at the same time, they could end up on the ground. They could Viana could potentially get takedowns, or Viana could potentially scramble to advantageous positions. Yeah, I just don't feel like I have a strong feel for how this fight's going to play out, so I'm staying away from it. But yeah, for those of you who are hanging out, if you've got any thoughts to share in the chat, I'm down to hear it, because this is one where I just don't feel like I have a strong read. Another thing to pay attention to here is that Poliana Viana is 30 years old. Jinyu Fry is 37. 37 is getting up there for a fighter, period. Obviously, if you're a heavyweight or light heavyweight, you can a lot of times fight well past 37. But anything below that, 37 is getting pretty old, and especially when you're down here at 115 pounds. At these smaller weight classes, your speed and your reaction time, your quickness, those are really, really important assets to have at these smaller weight classes. And those are the first things that start to go when you get a little older, right? So, and I haven't necessarily seen signs that Jinny Fry is slowing down, but sometimes these things can happen really quickly, right? Sometimes a fighter just kind of hits a wall. So we haven't seen, I don't think we have evidence that that's happening to Jinny Fry yet, but it's something that could happen. So the odds seem about right to me here, with Viana being favored a little bit, Jinny Fry being a little bit of a dog. This one's going to be another stay away from me. But I guess as far as a pick, um, yeah, I'm gonna pick Poliana Viana by either a sub or a decision. But yeah, I don't have a strong feeling on that one. Next up, we've got Mario Bautista versus Benito Lopez. This should be a pretty fun fight, I think. We haven't seen Benito Lopez in quite a while. He hasn't fought in over 3 years. If you've been watching or listening to other breakdowns this week, you've probably heard a lot of discussion already about Benito Lopez being a real estate agent. Unfortunately, Mushroom isn't in the chat right now, or he would he would comment that that realtors are 0-1 in the UFC. But yeah, Benito Lopez, he hasn't fought in 3 years. Got his real estate license. Um, so it just brings up questions of, where is his brain really at? And I did a guest spot on Couch Warriors show last night, and Couch Warriors said he was looking at Benito Lopez's Instagram, and there wasn't really any training pictures or anything like that. He said it was mostly just pictures of like his personal life and stuff. So it brings up questions of how dedicated is he really to his training right now? I mean, is he still a guy who goes out and gets his real estate license at 28 years old? He's not that old. I mean, is that a sign that you're not really focusing on the UFC as your career? Is that a sign that your mind is kind of elsewhere, and maybe he's just popping in for a paycheck? It's hard to say. But if he comes in at his best, I mean, I think when a fighter's been gone 3 years, it's really hard to guess with any amount of confidence what they're going to look like at all. But when Benito Lopez was at his best, he's an aggressive, pretty wild fighter. Like he does get a little loose and a little crazy, but he likes to come in hard and go for it, and I like to see that. And Mario Bautista is also kind of a hard charging, aggressive type of fighter, but he's a little more buttoned up and a little more technical than Benito Lopez, possibly even a lot more technical. But I like Mario Bautista's game a lot. I think he's well rounded. I think he's poised and confident in the octagon. I think he's dangerous. He's a guy who can find a knockout, can find a submission. I just think there's a lot to like about Mario Bautista's game, and so I do like Mario Bautista here. Tapology shows him minus 245, but I'm pretty sure he is a bigger favorite than that now. Okay, minus 275 is the best, but yeah, he's out there as high as like minus 350 in spots even. Benito Lopez plus 255. That's a spot that yeah, I'm definitely not interested in that underdog shot on Benito there. And Bautista's line is pretty wide, but I think there's a decent reason for that. I don't think that I have any. I thought about putting Bautista in a parlay. I don't think that I've done so yet, but it's one of those things that I may end up doing here before the week is over. But we shall see. Rob says, "Seems everybody is on Mario." Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think a lot of people are, and I mean, for the reasons I already mentioned, it's just that that 3 year layoff and the just potentially not being real focused on his training on the Benito Lopez side. It's a little bit concerning for sure. Plus, I mean, Mario Bautista is a damn good fighter. He's a dangerous guy, so should be a lot of fun. Should be a good fight. And I do think Mario Bautista, I was also looking at Mario Bautista's inside the distance line, which is at like plus 155. You know, it, does he find a finish here? Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a strong feeling about that, but I thought about pulling the trigger on that inside the distance line because I mean he's definitely a guy who can can get somebody out of there. So I do like Mario Bautista here. I'm gonna say a late finish. Let's say a late ground and pound finish, maybe. Next up, we've got Miranda Maverick versus Shanna Young. I'm not going to say a whole lot about this fight. This is a rematch of a fight that happened in Invicta back in 2019. This fight was booked once previously. Um, when they fought before, Miranda Maverick won in like 2 minutes or something like that. She was able to ground Shanna Young and get her out of there. I think it was a rear naked choke, if I remember correctly. One thing I want to say about Miranda Maverick, I thought she looked really, really good her last time out. I really liked her performance against Sabina Mazo. And Sabina Mazo is not a super high level fighter, but I mean, you can argue that Shanna Young isn't either. But I just thought I saw signs in that Sabina Mazo fight that Miranda Maverick was really kind of getting everything to click together, right? Which is a great thing to see from a younger fighter. She's only 25 years old. A lot of times we see younger fighters, they've got skills, they can strike, they can wrestle, they can grapple, but that's different. Having those separate skills and being able to put them together into a MMA game that sort of holds together and can be consistently counted on to put together proper and well-rounded and consistent MMA performances. That's a hard thing to do, and I think we saw Miranda Maverick do that in the Sabina Mazo fight. She was using her lateral movement really well. She was using her strikes really well. She was using movement to keep Mazo from being able to like set her feet and get anything off. She was also mixing up her strikes, coming in and throwing like a two punch combo and then moving laterally or throwing a leg kick. I mean, she kept moving, kept her guessing, and was able to time her takedown really well. I thought it was a really nice, well-rounded performance. And if she can, if she can put together a performance like that here, I think she should be able to handle Shanna Young, perhaps even somewhat easily. I don't think highly of Shanna Young, as evidenced by the fact that when Shanna Young fought Gina Mazzani, not only did I bet on Gina Mazzani, but Gina Mazzani was my most confident pick of that whole card. I should know better. I know, and I didn't. And Shanna Young beat Gina Mazzani, so that was rough for me. But I see Shanna Young's got, she's got a decent stand-up game. She throws nice kicks from range and that sort of thing. She can grapple a little bit. She's got a decent skill set overall, but I think Miranda Maverick should be able to handle her here. However, the line on this fight, what do we got here? Minus 549 is the best Maverick can be had for. She's out there as high as minus 909 on this book. But yeah, she's more like minus 650 to minus 700 range. Come back on Shanna Young. She can be had for as high as plus 491. See, that seems off to me. Even though I do think Miranda Maverick should have the upper hand here, her being like a 6-1 or 7-1 favorite, I don't think so. I really don't. I did make a bet on this fight right when Miranda Maverick's inside the distance line dropped. It dropped at plus 140. I put a full unit on that because I do like Maverick here and I do like her to probably find a finish. So I thought, getting a minus 600 minus 700 favorite inside the distance at plus 140 seemed like a decent bet to me, so I did go for that. But as far as that, as far, I wouldn't throw her in a bunch of parlays or anything at that like minus 650 minus 700 because I do think it's a closer fight than that. Don't don't let Shanna Young be your parlay buster is what I'm saying, I guess. But yeah, I like Miranda Maverick here. I like her to probably find a rear naked choke, maybe even early in the fight. But yeah, she should be able to handle Shanna Young, I think. What's Glenbot over 2.5, 6 out of 10, and over 1.5, 6 out of 10 of their five. But I like the over 1.5. I think Young does better here. Over 1.5. Yeah, I don't mind that. Over 1.5. That makes sense to me. Because I don't necessarily think it's going to be a repeat of the last fight. I don't necessarily think she's going to get her out of there that quickly. Next up, we've got Derek Minner versus Shayalan Nuerdanbieke. You know, I mean, what do we say about Derek Minner? I mean, we know I always hate to like oversimplify breaking down a fighter's style, but we know who Derek Minner is, right? He's pretty much. It's really not an exaggeration to say that he's round one sub or bust, right? I mean, the guy's got a ton of fights on his record. He's 26 and 30. Well, both of these guys have a ton of fights. Derek Minner is 26 and 13. Shayalan Nuerdanbieke is 37 and 10. So that's what he's 30, 47. I'm terrible at math. 30, 40. So there's what, almost 90 fights between the two, something like that. So yeah, and they're not old guys either, really. 32 and 28 with like 90 fights between them. That's pretty cool. But anyway, Derek Minner's a guy who he's got a lot of round one subs on his record. I don't know how many off the top of my head, but a bunch. And most of the time, if he can't find a round one sub, he doesn't win the fight, right? That's kind of how it turns out. That said, he is very dangerous. You know, he needs the round one sub to win for the most part, but he's pretty darn good at finding it. So you know, he is a guy who does get some wins and gets some wins over some decent fighters. I saw the Derek Minner round one submission line drop at plus 600 on Bet Online, and I did take a shot on that as soon as I saw that drop. I think I only put like 2/10 of a unit on it, but we'll take a look at all my bets that I've placed so far when we get to the end here. But even though I did bet that Derek Minner sub around one line, you know, as far as a pick here, I do kind of lean Shayalan to win because although it's important that we think about this, Shayalan has like five or was it seven? I can't remember. He's got quite a few submission losses on his record though. So I mean, when he does lose, that is a way that he does it. So you know, Minner is live to find that sub, but if he doesn't, I do think Shayalan is the bet, you know, the better overall fighter here. He has the better gas tank. You know, Minner does tend to slow down. Shayalan, he's got the wrestling. He can hit pretty hard. I suspect that he gets Derek Minner out of there if Minner doesn't get him out of there in round one. So I think this is a spot where you can look at the under 2.5. You can look at the fight doesn't go the distance because I do think that if Minner doesn't get that early finish, Shayalan should get a finish later in the fight. So I'm going to pick Shayalan. Let's say he gets a ground and pound stoppage in round 3, something like that. Glenbot says Minner's killer be killed. Absolutely. Yeah, he's the definition of that kind of fighter, right? Over 1.5, 7 out of 10, and over 2.5, 4 out of 10 on their last 5. All right, that's interesting. 2.5, 4 out of 10. Yeah, because I guess Minner did have that. Minner did have that fight where he went to decision with Charles Rosa, right? So you know, maybe maybe that was a sign that he turned a corner. We'll see, but yeah, I do like Shayalan to probably find the win here. Rob says Shayalan should get the W. I agree. Glenn says Shayalan round 2 or 3. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning as well. Sounds like we're largely on the same page here, fellas. What do we got up next? Mark Madsen versus Grant Dawson. I think this is an interesting fight. You know, looking at these two guys' records, Madsen 12-0, undefeated, Olympic wrestler. Grant Dawson 18-1-1. A couple of very impressive records there. Let's look at where the lines actually are here. Dawson favored. Best he can be had for is minus 214, but he's also out there, you know, minus 230 range. Excuse me. Madsen can be had for plus 195. All right, so this is another fight where I've kind of gone back and forth on it. It's hard for me to envision. You know, I mean, you know, part of what you do when you're doing tape study and research and handicapping fights is trying to sort of play out in your head. You know, how is this fight likely to play out? And I just don't feel like I have a clear picture of that. Um, Simply because you know Mark Madsen, obviously Olympic wrestler, fantastic wrestler, but he doesn't even really look to push the wrestling all the time. You know, he has developed a decent striking game. He's not a great striker, but he can box okay and he hits pretty hard. And obviously, you know, he's an Olympic level athlete. So I mean, the guy has strength, he has explosion, he has speed. You know, just kind of naturally. So, you know, a lot of times guys like that, guys that are just high level athletes are able to pick up other aspects of the game more quickly, right? Just because of the athleticism that they do have. And so it's like, you know, are we going to see Madsen potentially be happy doing a lot of striking here? You know, and Grant Dawson, you know, he's improved his striking. His striking isn't fantastic either. You know, both these guys definitely known more so as wrestlers or grapplers. Um, Dawson is a little bit bigger. Dawson is definitely the better submission grappler. Um, yeah, Glenbot says this fight is hard to pick. It is. It is. Yeah, like that's why. Like right now, like I said, I don't have my notes for this breakdown, so I'm trying to remember what my reads were on this fight, and I had such a hard time getting a read on it that I'm just stumbling over my words here, trying to figure out what I even want to say about this fight. So I guess for me, it comes down to this. It comes down to I think whether just because Mark Madsen is an Olympic wrestler doesn't mean Grant Dawson can't take him down, for one thing. So I think either if either guy gets takedowns, Grant Dawson is the better grappler of the two, the better submission grappler of the two. Grant Dawson is really good at taking the back, and obviously Mark Madsen is more than just an Olympic wrestler now. Obviously he trains MMA, he trains jiu-jitsu, but I think Grant Dawson is definitely the better submission grappler, the better BJJ artist of the two. Oh, so I don't know if you guys can hear that. There's some kind of work going on outside. It's really loud. Um, but yeah, I lean toward thinking if they end up on the ground, that Grant Dawson will be able to get into advantageous positions, probably be able to get to Mark Madsen's back and either, ride out some back control time or potentially find that rear naked choke. So I do lean Grant Dawson here, but this is another spot where I feel like the line might be a little bit wide. I don't know. I don't know. It's a tough one. I don't feel like I have great reads on this fight. What did Glenbot figure out? Over 2.5 and over 1.5 are 7 out of 10 of their last 5. Yeah, I do think this fight. I do think this fight goes late. I don't expect it to be over real early. Um, but yeah, I like Grant Dawson probably by decision. I don't know that he's could he find a sub maybe, but I expect that this fight probably goes the distance. Whew. I can tell I haven't done a stream in a while. My voice is giving out on me. Next up, we've got Tagir Ulanbekov versus Nate Maness. Maness. I don't know how to say his name. Nate Maness. Let's say that. Yeah, Mayhem. So we'll make it rhyme with that. Nate Mayhem Maness. Tagir Ulanbekov sitting at 13-2. Nate Maness at 14-2. Tagir it shows him minus 180 here. I think he's more like minus 200 now. Okay, yeah, he's out there even like minus 215, come back on Maness, plus 190 range, that kind of thing. This was actually the first bet that I placed on this card, if I remember correctly. I did bet Tagir. I got him at minus 170, and so I did get a little of the old CLV in my pocket there. Because yeah, when I finished the tape, I felt like Tagir should probably be around minus 200, which when I pulled up the line and saw he was minus 170, I took a shot on that right away. Nate Maness is a dangerous fighter. He absolutely is. And if this fight doesn't play out the way Tagir wants it to, he's probably going to be in trouble. If it does play out on the feet, I think Nate Maness could put Tagir in some difficult spots. But if we look at Nate Maness's fight with Umar Nurmagomedov, and I don't think Tagir is as good as Umar, but we saw that Maness can be taken down and can be held down and controlled for long periods of time. And I'm trying to remember without my notes here. I'm trying to remember. I hope I'm not mixing this up with a different fight. But if I remember correctly, in the Umar fight, Nate Maness was working off of his back. He was even closing his guard a lot, which is if you're closing your guard, that's a sign that you're basically just accepting bottom position, right? You're not working to get up you're not working to get up or look for a submission or really do much of anything other than potentially hold on and hope that the ref gives you a stand up. So even though we have seen Nate Maness get up off the bottom, sometimes he kind of will just settle in and accept that. So I do like the wrestling of Tagir and the top control of Tagir here to probably ride him out for a decision win here. So like I said, I did take Tagir at minus 170. Glenbot says going for the over 1.5 on this one. Yeah. I think this one goes over. Rob Lawrence, I already have 50 on Maness money line. I just like the guy. Yeah, and I mean, he's a dangerous guy. I mean, this is like I said, this is a spot where even though I did bet Tagir here, this is a spot where if things don't go Tagir's way, it's going to be problematic. So yeah, like even though I bet him, I'm not like, oh yeah, he's a lock or anything like that. Like it could absolutely get ugly for him. But I like Tagir here, probably by decision. Next up, we're looking at Josh Parisian versus Chase Sherman, the People's main event. And this isn't just the people's main event of this card. This is the people's main event of 2022. Am I right? Unless it was already Chase Sherman versus Vandera, but what's the difference, right? Like I said in my write up on the Never Hedge newsletter this week, have you ever seen Josh Parisian and Jared Vandera in the same room? Of course not. Yeah, yeah. There's all. It seems like at any given time, there's a couple like kind of schlubby heavyweights. I'm allowed to call them schlubby because I'm schlubby myself. But at any given time, there's always a couple schlubby heavyweights that I mix up in my brain that just seem like kind of the same guy to me. Um, but yeah, this fight, I think Chase Sherman is a small favorite now. Yeah, Chase Sherman's out there minus 123, even as high as minus 130, 135 type of range. Josh Parisian comeback on him is plus 112. And yeah, this does feel like a close fight to me. That line makes sense. I'm not going to say a whole lot about this fight because I just think it's going to be a sloppy, fun slobber knocker. Um, if Parisian is able to get Chase Sherman down, I mean, we've obviously seen that that's the easiest way to beat Chase Sherman. If you can get him on his back, he's a fish out of water, right? However, he does have pretty decent takedown defense, and Josh Parisian isn't an excellent wrestler by any means. If Parisian can get Chase Sherman down, I think Parisian should be able to, probably get him out of there with, a TKO stoppage by hammer fists or something like that. But if it largely plays out on the feet, I do think Chase Sherman should be. I think he's quicker. I think he throws faster, straighter punches. I do like Chase Sherman to get the win here if it stays largely on the feet. Look at that, guys! I finally have porn bots in my chat. I don't think I've ever had porn bots in my chat before. And also, this will give me a good opportunity. Okay, put user in timeout, block user. Okay, I've never actually done this before, so I never knew how to do that. Block user. Cool. There, I just blocked somebody. It's the first time I've ever done that, guys. Whoever's watching live, you just got to see me block somebody for the first time. So that was kind of fun. But anyway, so when Chase Sherman fought Jared Vandera, on the show, I haven't done the show Big Money Bets for a few weeks now, but that's a show I'd been doing on Thursday nights. And the biggest prop that I gave out on that show was Chase Sherman by round 3 KO over Jared Vandera. And what happened in that fight? Chase Sherman by round 3 KO. So let's ride that train, folks. Let's say it's going to happen again. Chase Sherman by round 3 KO here against Josh Parisian. That is going to be my official prediction. Rob says Betway doesn't have Chase fight on this card. No props too. Huh, that's weird. And that means I made it. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too, right? Yeah. You got chat bots showing up in your or porn bots showing up in your chat. Means you made it. That is how I am choosing to take that as well. Next up, we've got Neil Magny versus Daniel Rodriguez. This is a fun fight, good fight. It's another one that I came away from the tape thinking it's gonna be a coin flip, and then I look up the odds and it was a coin flip because yeah, I had a hard time getting excuse me a strong lean one way or the other on this one. But I do think that line has moved a little bit. Where are we? God, that is so loud out there. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but I'd be surprised if you can't because it's deafening. Yeah, Magny's favored a little bit, minus 113. Daniel Rodriguez can be had for plus 105. So I thought about this fight a lot. I kind of went back and forth on it, and the conclusion that I've come to is that Neil Magny is something like 22-9 in the UFC if you count his tough fights. The guy has won 16 UFC fights by decision, which is I'm pretty sure is the UFC record. I can't imagine there's anyone who's won more than 16 UFC fights by decision. The only other person who would be even close would be Andrei Arlovsky, right? I'm not sure how many he has, right off the top of my head here. But anyway, Neil Magny's been around forever. He's been fighting in the UFC for just about a decade now. He's fought everybody. He's definitely taken some losses, but he's beat a lot of good fighters too. Um, he's very long. He's got some height and some reach on. He's got like 6 inches of reach, 2 inches of height on Daniel Rodriguez here. He's good at using his jab to stay long. He's good at using that reach to keep the distance. He's a good wrestler. He's good in the clinch. He's a good grappler. Daniel Rodriguez is the better boxer of the two, I think, and has more power. He's got more pop in his hands. But other than that, when it comes right down to it, like I just ended up having to favor Neil Magny here, largely because of his experience, his well-roundedness, the fact that he's kind of been in there with everybody, and you know, you kind of have to. He's a great gatekeeper. I mean, you kind of have to be maybe not elite, but you know, you have to be pretty damn good to beat Neil Magny, and you have to kind of bring something that's going to be difficult for him to deal with. And I don't know that Daniel Rodriguez is going to be able to do that. I think the key for Daniel Rodriguez here is going to be to use his power. I think he needs to hurt Magny, right? I think he needs to hurt him. I think he needs to put a little bit of fear in him. You know, Magny's going to be you know, trying to be aggressive, trying to move forward. I think Rodriguez needs to drop him, you know, sit him down, get him thinking about that power a little bit so that he's a little bit tentative and not as willing to come forward and make his game work for him. And if Rodriguez is able to do that, you know, he might be able to pull it off. But I do lean Magny here, not real confidently. But and of course the first thing I wanted to see, because Magny has won so many decisions, is I was like, well, I want to see what his decision prop looks like. But you know, the bookies are pretty wise to that because his decision prop is at only like plus 120 or something. So I ended up staying away from this fight. What did Glenbot say here? Most confident play over 1.5, 9 out of 10, and over 2.5, 8 out of 10. Yeah. I think that's a good call. I have Magny, but D-Rod is tough. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you know the line's really close, and I think it makes sense. I think it could be a fight that plays out really closely. Oh, Glenbot says use the over 1.5 to boost your sub even plays. Yeah, good call. Good call. All right. Just a few fights, or no, one fight. Yeah, that was, I forgot that was a co-main event already. Only one fight left. That brings us to Marina Rodriguez versus Amanda Lemos. Should be a pretty cool fight. A couple of hard-hitting strawweights here. A couple of good Muay Thai fighters. You know, I think most of this fight's just going to look like a Muay Thai match, and I am not complaining because that should be pretty fun to watch. You know, obviously a couple of high-level fighters here. Look at those records: 16-1-2 for Rodriguez, 12-2-1 for Amanda Lemos. Yeah, Rodriguez is a pretty big favorite here, minus 210. I think that's actually still pretty accurate. Yeah, minus 215. Come back on Lemos plus 189. Um, you know, it's a 5-round fight. If I'm not mistaken, Lemos has never gone. So I guess yeah, her fight with Jessica Andrade would have been a main event, right? But you know that fight was over in the first round. So yeah, I don't believe Lemos has ever gone, you know, late into the championship rounds, at least not at the UFC level. And you know, the story on Lemos is that she does tend to slow down a little bit. We you know, we don't see her necessarily like death gas, but she slows down a little bit and she becomes less technical. You know, her she starts kind of looping her shots a little more. She gets a little looser. She gets a little just a little less tight and a little less technical with her striking, I think, and probably, you know, a little less powerful as well. But you know, I think Lemos is. I think Rodriguez is the better technical Muay Thai striker here. I think Rodriguez is the better kickboxer, but Lemos brings a little more danger, I think, and Lemos might be the better grappler of the two. But you know, I'm not sure about that either. I don't feel real confident on that one. But um, so Lemos is good. You know, I think Lemos will be dangerous early. You know, she brings that power, but that power does start to fade, especially as we get into, you know, like the third round, that kind of thing. So I think personally, if you like Lemos, I think you got a better inside the distance. You know, I personally wouldn't pick, you know, because I mean she's live for a KO or for a sub. You know, as we saw in her last fight, she can find submissions. So you know, I really don't see Lemos being able to win a 5-round decision over Marina Rodriguez here. That seems very unlikely to me. So if you're going to bet Lemos, I would say look at her inside the distance prop. Um, but I do favor Rodriguez here. You know, I do favor that, you know, as the fight goes on, you know, assuming Lemos isn't able to finish her in the first couple rounds, which I don't think she will, but it's certainly possible. I think Rodriguez is going to be able to take over as the fight goes on. And this is a spot. Couch Warrior brought this up. I don't have access to a book that has this bet, but you know, those like 3-4-5 decision or like 4-5 decision type of bets. If you have access to Marina Rodriguez in round 3-4-5 or decision or 4-5 decision, that's one I would potentially look at taking, because I think the most likely outcome for this fight is Marina Rodriguez by a late finish or by decision. Officially, I'm going to go with Rodriguez by decision, but it will be interesting. You know, if that happens, it will be interesting to see what Amanda Lemos looks like as we get to, you know, rounds 4 and 5. What did Glenbot have to say here? Amanda KO or let me go Lambo Martina round 4-5 props. Yeah. Yeah. I think yeah. If Amanda wins here, it's going to be inside the distance, and then yeah, that 4-5 prop for Martina, I think, is a great call. That is a bet I would be making if I had access to it, but I'm in Nevada, so I can't use FanDuel or DraftKings. But anyway, that's the whole card there, gang. My voice is giving out already, but let's take a look at. Before we go, I was going to take a peek at the bets that I've placed so far. Here, let me see if I can blow that up for you a little bit. Yeah, that's not too bad. So the bets that I've placed so far, I've got that. Oh, I guess it was 170. I thought I got Tagir at 170, but it's 175. Fair enough. I got Tagir at minus 175 to win 1 unit. That's the only money line bet I've placed so far. I did parlay Marina Rodriguez and Jake Hadley for 1 unit at plus 106. I got Maverick inside the distance 1 unit at plus 140. Bautista by submission plus 550, put point 0.2 on that. I got Minner by sub round one at plus 600, put point 0.2 on that. Parisian versus Sherman over 1.5. I put 1 unit at minus 160. And then Minner Sholinian under 2.5. I put 1.3 units at minus 130. That's all I've got so far. The other play that I was looking at, I've been looking at adding a parlay of Bautista and who was the other? Bautista and Grant Dawson, which I don't love the lines on either of those two, but you know, how often do we as sports bettors look at a line and say, I can't bet that line because there's no value there, but we parlay it anyway. Like, you know, in theory, it's not the smartest thing to do, but I'm not a professional gambler. I do this for fun. My unit size is peanuts. So yeah, I throw some dumb bets around because I'm trying to have a good time. Look who showed up here, plays in Fade Sports. Probably my homie Gordo there. Let's go, Erik. Let's go, Gordo, as well. You showed up just in time for the end of the show. Rob Lawrence says, love parlays. Dude, so do I. And actually, if you look at my Bet MMA tips tracked record, parlays are where I have the best ROI. That's where I've been losing some parlays lately, but early on, when I first started tracking, I hit a bunch of parlays, and I was sitting at like 40 some percent ROI on parlays for quite a while, but that has dropped significantly. But anyway, that's all I got for you, folks. I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. Yes, I'll be sure to go back and check it out. Much love, good luck this weekend. Thanks so much, Gordo. Much love and good luck to you as well. Much love to everybody else who showed up in the chat, Glenbot and Rob and Patrick and the porn bots that were here earlier. Much love to them as well. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. I am Erik with Erik Betts Fights, reminding you to play it smart, play it tight. Let's grow those bankrolls. Enjoy the fights at UFC Vegas 64 this weekend, and take care, everybody.